Welcome, everyone, to Voltaic Scouting's second segment of our season review for the 2020 NFL draft class of rookies. And this one will be covering the rest of the offense since the first one covered the quarterbacks. And we're going to get started right away with the running backs. And so the first running back taken, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Alex, what do you think about how he performed his rookie year?
So obviously Clyde got hurt a few weeks ago. So, his rookie year ended prematurely, although I'm sure we'll see him in the playoffs. Um, and I think, he started off the season really strong, and then, he kind of underperformed a little bit. The Chiefs signed Le'Veon Bell, and his rookie season was, nothing to really note, but there were definitely flashes, and you could definitely see his potential. Obviously, in his first game of the season, he really popped off the screen. He was probably the best player in that game besides Patrick Mahomes. And I just think, honestly, as the year went on, the Chiefs' offensive line got worse and worse. I know that's not really covered a lot because Mahomes just scrambles all over the place, but their offensive line really is not that good, and that definitely hurt Edwards-Helaire. But I saw the flashes. I saw his ability to catch the ball, and there are flashes. I'm expecting big things from him next year, though.
Yeah, I think I pretty much agree with everything you said. I think it's important to understand that he did not really get the feature role that a lot of the other running backs in this class did, because the Chiefs' passing offense, as we all know, is prolific. It's the best in the league, and so he really wasn't put in a position where he had to be consistently carrying the offense, and so he didn't really get to showcase his abilities as much as some of the other running backs in this class. That being said, he was my number one running back coming out, and I maintain that he is really a top talent in this running back class because he's just a smart runner and good patience and decisiveness, and I think that he'll be able to showcase that in future years, and he'll stick as a good running back in this league.
Yeah, now we can move on to the next one, which was DeAndre Swift, drafted at the top of the second round. And I think he really popped off the screen a little bit in the middle of the year. I would say he had a slow start to the season, splitting carries with Adrian Peterson. Then he really started to produce and show why he was one of the top running backs in the draft class. And then I think he got the concussion. He was out for a few weeks, and the Lions kind of ended the season splitting carries with between him and Peterson, showing Peterson some respect. I'm pretty sure he's on his way out. But I think we really saw flashes again from Swift that show that next year I feel like I'm going to say this for multiple running backs in this episode, but I expect big things, and I think you could see his power running. And what do you have to say about Swift pretty quickly?
Yeah, I think that Swift is exactly like you said. I think he's a really well-rounded back. He's a three down back. He showed a lot of receiving ability this year, and I expect him to take a step forward next year. His rookie year was really interrupted because he broke out. I remember he had a really good game, and then he missed a stretch of games with injury, and then once he came back, it was really towards the end of the season. So I think next year he's really going to take a step forward, and he's going to become a good future back.
Yeah, definitely. Now we can move on to Jonathan Taylor, who has really shown up in the second half of the season. I know week 17 we named him our offensive rookie of the week. He set the franchise record with 253 rushing yards. So he's really impressed us a lot. I thought that he was a pretty well-rounded running back. I know you thought a little bit differently. My biggest knock on him was his fumbling issues, and that really has not shown up in the NFL. So I think that's really good for him. And I know if you want to talk about what you saw coming out and how he's impressed you.
Yeah, I think that I had two negatives on him. One of them I take ownership of that I was wrong. The other one I really I couldn't do much about it. he had a big fumble issue at Wisconsin, and I think he was averaging maybe 6 fumbles a season. Which, if he carried that over to the NFL, he would not be seeing an RB1 role. And so I was really concerned about whether or not he would be able to cut down on those fumbles. And he has had 1 fumble all season. So that one is like I don't understand how I could have really thought that he would just magically stop fumbling. The other one, I thought he didn't really have much ability to bounce or run outside and turn the perimeter. That he was really more of just an interior runner, and that's it. And then we're seeing now that he doesn't need to be more, because his interior running, his downhill running with the burst he has and the physicality he has and the contact balance, he is an elite interior runner, and he doesn't need to be bouncing runs outside because he's that talented between the tackles. And it's incredible how he's finished the season, because now you look at his rookie stat line, and for the first half of the season we thought he was disappointing, and now he's ended up with a stat line of 1,160 something yards and 11 touchdowns, with a 5.0 yards per carry average. So he's just all of a sudden turned his rookie season into a really, really good one. And I feel like a lot of people aren't talking about it enough.
Yeah, one thing I want to just point out quickly. There's a calculation I like to do when I'm scouting all my running backs, and it's touches per fumble. Um, and some of the best running backs coming out every year have 100 touches per fumble. Jonathan Taylor had 53 touches per fumble. So if he's a workhorse running back, that's a fumble every 2 games. That's obviously not what you want to see, but like you said, 1 fumble this whole season. He's really improved on that. And now we can move on to my favorite running back from this draft class, and I stand by that, J.K. Dobbins. So, I really thought that Dobbins was the most well-rounded running back. And, when he was drafted to the Ravens, I was a little disappointed because I knew that he wasn't going to get the amount of touches that some of the other running backs going into that running back room with Mark Ingram, Gus Edwards, and then Lamar Jackson at quarterback. But we definitely do see flashes from Dobbins that show that he will probably be the #1 running back next year with the Ravens. I think Mark Ingram's on his way out. I think Gus Edwards is a good, third down change of pace guy. But I think, Dobbins really is a 3-down back. I think, he's a strong runner. He's a great blocker in the pass game. I thought he was the best blocker from the running back position. And I really think he's a great pass catcher too. So I thought there was nothing that was like an insanely elite trait about him, but I think he was really good in all phases of the game. And I think he's going to be a 3-down back for years to come in the NFL.
Yeah, I thought highly of him too. Not as much as you. I had him as my RB3, and with a high second round grade, and that's still thinking highly of him. And I think that he's burst onto the scene really late in the season, not quite to the extent of Jonathan Taylor, but he's getting a touchdown every game. He's really getting a big chunk of carries every single game, whereas in the first half of the season it was really inconsistent, the workload he'd carry from game to game. And heading into the playoffs, the Ravens rushing attack is really what they rely on offense, and he is a large part of that. And so I think that next year, as you said, he's going to be getting an even bigger share of the touches because he's a more talented back than Gus Edwards, and I think he's going to really improve.
Yeah, now we can go on to some of the running backs that were also taken high and haven't gotten as many touches as some of these top guys, but still have produced. So we can start off with Cam Akers, who was actually drafted ahead of J.K. Dobbins. That surprised both of us.
Yeah, I think neither of us were really high on Cam Akers, and he's had a mixed rookie year, so it's going to be interesting to see how he develops. He had I know he had a huge game against the Patriots, and that's in that game he really showed that he has a nice burst and he has some good traits. But overall, I think he really struggled to get a firm hold on a running back job that really should have been his, because the others in the room have had their shots and really haven't convinced, and so he didn't really face the stiff competition that some other guys would have faced. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how he develops. Clearly, the Rams, if they picked him in the second round ahead of J.K. Dobbins, think very highly of him and expect him to to have a nice second year leap. So we're gonna see if he manages to improve.
Yeah, so now we can move on to probably the most impressive running back on Antonio Gibson. We've talked about him a lot in the rookie reviews just because how impressed we were is his seamless transition from wide receiver to running back. I know you were really high on him coming out higher than most, especially for a wide receiver transitioning to a running back. So I'm sure you would like to touch on him a little bit too.
Yeah, I remember I was scouting him, and I had heard that there was a debate on whether or not he's a running back or a wide receiver at the next level, and I knew he had very few snaps at running back, so I was surprised as to how people could think that that's his better position. But I think he had 36 snaps at running back, and each of them was really good. And I was blown away by how somebody who didn't even play running back had a natural feel for the position that he did. You would expect his vision and more the nuance, the fundamentals of the position to be really raw, and it was just his athleticism. But I saw somebody who really, if he extrapolated that to a larger workload, could be a really talented running back in the NFL. And I think that he's nowhere near hitting his ceiling, because what really puzzles me is that the Washington football team gives passing down duties to J.D. McKissick instead of Antonio Gibson. And I don't want to knock McKissick at all. He's had a breakout year in his career. But Antonio Gibson is somebody who was a wide receiver in college and a productive one. So he could be running all the routes out of the backfield and really being an elite receiving threat out of the backfield on top of being a solid runner. I know he gashed the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. And I think that if next year they really make him a 3-down back that's really a workhorse, I think he could burst off on the scene more than anyone thinks, because right now people are really evaluating him like they are any other rookie running back, without remembering that this is his first season at the position.
Yeah, totally. I think obviously, like we've both said, his transition has been amazing from wide receiver to running back, and he still has so much to learn. Not that he is really raw at the running back position. He's really mature for the amount of snaps he's played at the running back position so far. But he has such a high ceiling, because if this is basically his starting point as a running back. So I think now we'll move on to James Robinson, who I would consider the most consistent running back, the most consistent rookie running back. From the start, he was solid. Through the season, he was solid. And at the end of the season, he was solid. I wouldn't say he's the best, but I feel like he's been the most consistent, just probably because he's gotten the most consistent amount of carries throughout the season. But, he was an undrafted free agent rookie. And I don't think either of us scouted him, but we've both been really impressed by how he's played as an undrafted rookie.
Yeah, I actually think that I'm higher on his rookie season than you are. It sounds like, because I really what annoys me almost is that I feel like his undrafted tag is going to stick to him as he has his whole career, because you're really seeing the rookie season he had, in which his offense was really bad, and he managed to average 4.5 yards per carry and carry a full workload that included passing down duties as well, despite the fact that he was facing stacked boxes, and that his team had signed a receiving specialist in Chris Thompson. He was still getting all the carries, all the receiving work, and producing. And so I think especially coming out of an undrafted rookie free agent contract, that's he's really impressed me, and I hope that he gets the respect that he deserves if he continues developing and really stays a good running back in this league, because I think he's had a great rookie year.
Oh, I do too. I think, like I said, he's been the most consistent, but I think, next year, I don't think he'll be the best running back from this draft class. I think there'll be a few, just because they have some of that top end talent. Where James Robinson, I think he's really good, but I think he's just really solid, and I don't expect him to be, um, you know, a second team All Pro or even a Pro Bowler, because I think there's a lot of really, really good running backs in the league, but I think he's been really solid, and I think he'll continue to be. I think if we want to
Yeah,
just touch on the last few running backs quickly, AJ Dillon, he had a great game versus the Titans, but pretty much other than that game, his rookie season wasn't really much of note. He really only played in that game because Jamal Williams was out. And I think the last running back we want to touch on in this segment was Zach Moss.
Yeah. Real quick about AJ Dillon, I think that we'll see what the Packers really think about him, what determining what they do at the running back position this offseason. I know Aaron Jones is a pending free agent. If they choose not to re-sign him and stick with AJ Dillon and Jamal Williams, then we'll see if he can really continue to showcase what he did against the Titans. And for Zach Moss, he's not somebody I was high on coming out. I think he's confirmed that because he can be a solid change of pace back in this league, but the Bills rushing has really been their weak point on offense because neither Singletary nor Moss really got going this year, and I didn't really see a special trait from him. I thought he was a fairly powerful back, but not very athletic or dynamic, and I didn't think he warranted a day 2 pick, and I don't think he's shown otherwise.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I really saw him as, more of a power in between the tackles runner, but, nothing really special. Maybe, somebody that you can hand the ball off to if you want to punch it in on the goal line. Now I think we can move on to the impressive wide receiver class, and we'll start off with the best wide receiver in this draft class, Justin Jefferson.
Oh yeah, there's not much to say because it's all been said already. 1,400 yards, the most rookie receiving yards in the modern era. That hats off to Justin Jefferson, ladies and gentlemen. He is an incredible special wide receiver talent, and I think what's really important to note is that he was the most well-rounded coming out. And I think a lot of teams missed that, and we missed that. We had him ahead of Henry Ruggs, but behind Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb. And while Jerry Jeudy might not be the most physical receiver and CeeDee Lamb might not be an elite separator, Justin Jefferson really has some of everything. He's a great route runner. He's got really reliable hands. He's fast. He's explosive. And I think that's showing on the NFL. And he's going to be a number 1 receiver for years to come.
Yeah, I think, you touched on, what we missed about him was that he was really well-rounded everywhere. He does everything really well. I don't think there's one trait that you could say this is elite about Justin Jefferson. CeeDee Lamb, I think he has elite ability after the catch. I think Jeudy has elite route running. But, Jeudy didn't have elite physicality. And, we think he might struggle with some guys in press coverage and stuff like that. And like you said, Lamb didn't have elite separation. But, Jefferson was really great all around. And now we can hop into those two wide receivers that we mentioned, Jeudy and Lamb.
Yeah, I think Jerry Jeudy is being too overlooked after his rookie season. I think he dealt with a really inconsistent, poor Broncos offense. And from what I saw, he was getting open just like he was at Alabama, and there just wasn't a quarterback to get him the ball. He's showed flashes because he really is a talented receiver, and people are too quick to talk about after Justin Jefferson, is it Lamb that's the best? Is it Claypool that's the best? Is it Higgins that's the best out of this draft class? Jerry Jeudy was my number 1 receiver, and obviously I'm wrong. That should have been Justin Jefferson. But I think Jerry Jeudy is going to still become the second best receiver in this draft class because his separation ability is unmatched. And I expect if the Broncos do improve their offense, that he'll take a big step forward next year.
Yeah, and I think, Lamb's very similar where he was put in a situation that we thought would be really good for him. I thought, Cooper and Gallup would be able to take away most of the defense's attention, and you have Ezekiel Elliott running the ball. I thought that would open up opportunities for Lamb, but obviously with Dak getting injured, Zeke really underperforming, Lamb hasn't been put in that best situation, but he was my number 1 receiver. Like you said, we were wrong. Justin Jefferson should have been our number 1 receiver, and we'll take those notes and those things that we've learned and put it into 2021 and beyond. But I really still think that, Lamb's with his elite run after the catch, I still think he'll be a really good receiver to come out of this draft. And if we want to hop into now some of the other quarterbacks that were late first and day 2 picks.
Wide
Start
receiver,
off with Jim
just a
Weaver.
correction. Yeah. As you said with Lamb, I totally agree. I think I thought highly of him, and I still think he's going to break out and have a really solid career. With Jalen Rieger, I think that the Eagles are forever going to regret not picking Justin Jefferson over him, and they're going to regret it in a big way. I did not think Rieger was worthy of a first round draft choice, and I thought that he really was a raw receiver. And given that there's really no other offensive threat on that team right now, it was really tough rookie year for him. And I hope that he does manage to really progress in his second season. And if there is an uptick on that offense, then I think he will be able to be more productive.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with what you said. I also didn't think he was a first round talent. And I think it was definitely a mistake taking him over Justin Jefferson. I don't know who made that pick or what, but I know at the time it was a stunner, and even now looking back, it's even worse. So now, if we want to touch on Chase Claypool, definitely a player that we were both wrong on. But I think he really improved from what we saw from college into the NFL. We saw him mostly as a jump ball receiver. We didn't really see his ability to create much separation in college, but he's definitely showing that ability now at the NFL level.
Yeah, what's really impressive to me is that we saw him really be a combine star and have athletic numbers, testing numbers that we did not expect, because that's simply not what we saw on film. On film, we saw a jump ball receiver who couldn't get any separation and who had moderate athleticism. And then at the combine, he came out and he tested it phenomenally. And I was hesitant to believe that he really improved his athleticism in the span of just a couple months, but somehow it seems like he has, because seeing him in his rookie year with Pittsburgh, his big plays are not solely getting the contested catch. He's still very good at that, but he now has some separation ability. And when you combine that with how good he is at getting a 50-50 ball, that makes him a really dangerous player on that offense.
Definitely, and we want to keep moving through all these receivers. So, and there's a lot of them. So we're just going to touch on them all quickly. If we want to touch on Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, Brandon Ayuk is a guy that I think that the 49ers really put him in the right system. They really prioritize having a run after the catch ability on their offense, and that's really his strongest trait. And they put him in a situation where he gets to maximize that, which is really good for him. And I think he quietly had a really good rookie year, because I know he was injured for some of it, but he did have a lot of games, and when he did play, he was actually really productive. So I think that once they get the offense and the whole team back to full health next year, he can really take on a role similar to Deebo Samuel in that offense.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll just touch on T. Higgins a little bit. I think I wasn't as high on him. I was definitely lower than where he was drafted, 33 overall. But I think he's definitely proven me wrong a little bit. He's still a really good jump ball receiver, but he's definitely shown improved route running. And I think he's really began to form a special connection with Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I totally agree. And now we're gonna jump into a duo of day three picks that really ended up panning out way better than we expected. The first one is Darnell Mooney, and the second one is Donovan Peoples-Jones. And Darnell Mooney has really shown an ability to get open using his route running and his explosiveness, despite having a smaller frame. And I think that if he were to have a better quarterback, because Mitch Trubisky has had a good stretch of games lately, but for much of the season there was really lackluster quarterback play in Chicago. But he's really been a revelation. He took the number 2 job really quickly, and with Allen Robinson on the way out in Chicago, he's really going to get to have a nice breakout year next year. And I think that he's really been flying under the radar. And what would you like to say about Donovan Peoples-Jones as we wrap up this wide receiver class, and how he's really been a nice find in the 6th round for the Browns?
Yeah, so I had a 3.7 grade on Donovan Peoples-Jones, which warrants a late day 2 pick. Um, and I was surprised when he was there in the 6th round. Obviously, I think I was higher on him than most of the league was, and that's why I slipped to the 6th round. But I thought he was nothing. He didn't really do anything super special, but I thought he was a well-rounded receiver that really was held back a little bit by poor quarterback play at Michigan. So I was happy to see him break out the past few weeks, and I think he could really solidify his second or third receiver role on that Browns team that's probably going to lose Odell Beckham next year.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was big for them to find someone stepping up after Odell Beckham went down, and for their playoff aspirations, that was really key. And so now moving on, the tight end class is really what we expected. It was a weak class to begin with, and tight ends typically don't produce as rookies, and we have seen basically nothing. I'd say the only two tight ends that have really shown any type of productivity have been Cole Kmet and Harrison Bryant. I know Cole Kmet was your tight end one, Harrison Bryant was my tight end one. And they're probably the ones that we respectively expect to come out of this relatively poor tight end class in the future. But it really was disappointing the rookie years, although it wasn't a big surprise.
Yeah, like you said, the tight end class was probably one of the worst we've seen in a while. And like tight ends take a while to come on anyways, so we didn't expect anything at all. I think Harrison Bryant had his 2 touchdown game. Cole Kmet has had a few plays here and there for the Bears. Obviously, Jimmy Graham's there as their number one tight end, but nothing really of note. Nothing to touch on. Pretty much what we expected, and we'll move on to the last part of the offense. Move on to the Hogs, the offensive line. And I think um, we didn't think it was we thought it was a good, not great offensive line class. Obviously, there were a lot of first round offensive tackles. So we'll just jump into them. Probably the best offensive lineman this year, Mekhi Becton. That has surprised both of us. I think I was worried about his size. He wouldn't be able to move very well. And he was really, really raw coming out. But from day one, he really showed that something changed from his last college season into the start of his NFL season because he's been really solid. He shut down players like Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram for the Chargers. So it's just been really, really impressive from Mekhi Becton, and he seems to be a staple of that Jets offensive line.
I totally agree. What we saw on film is not what we're seeing now, and he's really kudos to him for a huge improvement. I think he was a Pro Bowl snub. He definitely deserved to be a Pro Bowl selection. I know you agree on that. I think the next one to talk about is Tristan Wirfs. He was my first offensive tackle in my positional rankings, and I think he's had a good rookie year. I expected him to have some growing pains because he wasn't the most refined. He's more of an athletic developmental tackle coming out, but he did have some level of refinement to build on. And I think he's doing a good job of that.
Yeah, now we can move on to the other two top half of the first round offensive tackles, Jedrick Wills and Andrew Thomas. Wills, I don't think he's been good, not great. I don't think he's had any horrible games. He hasn't had any breakout games like Becton and Wirfs both have. But I think like we expected, growing pains. They all had things that they had to work on, but I think next year they'll improve. I know Andrew Thomas started off the season really poor, but the second half of the season, I think, he's been on an upward trajectory. I think something that really helped actually was when the Giants fired their offensive line coach and brought in a new one. I think that was really when the change in Andrew Thomas happened. So, good for him. You hate to be wrong, and I think we were right with not having Andrew Thomas as the offensive tackle one. But we also I don't mind being wrong if it means that somebody's succeeding in the NFL.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. I think Mekhi Becton is not somebody that we can really ask ourselves how did we not predict this because it really wasn't there on tape, and and he's taken a big step forward. I do think Andrew Thomas is going to improve, but he was a 3-year starter at Georgia. He was not really a raw prospect. I didn't think that he had much potential, and that's why I gave him a late first round grade, and I had him after a couple others of these offensive tackles. And so really, I think that Becton is going to stay the elite talent he is. Tristan Wirfs is going to be could really push that. Jedrick Wills is going to be a solid tackle, and I think Andrew Thomas will be a step under that. And I want to move on to now the one of the steals of the draft is the New England Patriots picking Michael Onwenu in the 6th round out of Michigan, and he was a guy that I saw really just a power blocker who could be a depth piece on an offensive line, but didn't really have the athleticism needed to be a starter in this league. And he's actually played to the level of people saying that he also was next to Becton, a Pro Bowl snub, and he certainly was the second best offensive tackle in this class in terms of rookie performance. So that was a really impressive rookie year from Onwenu.
Yeah, I agree. I saw him as more of a depth guy. I didn't see him as a starting offensive tackle really ever in his career. Maybe come in when the starter got injured and play for a few games, but definitely nowhere near the performance that he's had. And like you said, everybody really considers him, that number 2 tackle in this class. And any other offensive linemen that you want to highlight? Maybe some of the later first round picks.
Yeah, there's Austin Jackson to Miami. I know we both thought he was pretty raw, and I think he's shown that he does need more time in the league to develop. But I think the really interesting one to talk about is Isaiah Wilson, because this is not really what we've seen on the football field, because he's barely been on the football field, but there's been a whole barrage of really questionable, concerning behavior from him off the field. If you want to get a little into that, and if you think he can salvage his NFL career after that.
Yeah, so I know ever since he got drafted, I'm pretty sure he got into a car accident and it was a DUI, and then he'd been on and off the COVID list multiple times due to partying, and there's just been nonstop problems from Isaiah Wilson. And then I know before week 17 he was caught partying again out. So I think it's been really troubling, and that's nothing you heard from anyone at Georgia. They all thought there was nothing to worry about off the field. And it's been a crazy year. I don't know what's going on in his life. I don't really want to, speculate as to why anything's happening. But I just thought it was something important to bring up. And, because he was a first round pick, so I'm sure people are saying, hey, what happened to this guy? He was a first round pick and he's barely been on the field. I haven't really heard his name at all. And, yeah, that's what's happening. Hopefully, he can pull it together, get his life in order. Obviously, we want that first. But, we weren't high on him. Neither of us had a first round grade. I think, I had a third round grade. I think that's what you had too.
Yep.
Just did not see, the first round talent, but tackles a need, so teams are going to reach.
Yeah, I thought that he was a powerful tackle, but I didn't see much advanced technique from him, and I certainly didn't see enough athleticism to hold up at tackle. I thought he was somebody who would move into guard, that he could have a solid career as somebody returning 3rd-round value at guard. And that's going to make it even harder for him to come back after the year he's had, because when he doesn't have the talent of the first-round pick that he was taken as, and just to go over what you said, he had 2 DUIs, multiple instances of partying, multiple stints on early in the season on the COVID/reserve list because of the exposure that he put on himself. And after all the mistakes that he was making in the summer and in the early season, he went out on New Year's Eve and got caught partying again and had more ramifications. And I hope for him that he's going to be able to get his career back on track. But right now, I already thought it was a bad pick just solely off what I saw on tape coming out of the draft, and I don't have much hope for his NFL career, unfortunately. But I do hope that he can put it together. It would be nice for him, because right now I think a lot of people are actually concerned about the young man and the choices he's making, and so we'd love to see him be able to get his life and his career back on track.
Yeah, so that about sums it up for the rest of our offense for our rookie review. This was part 2 of 3. If you haven't seen the first part, that was all about quarterbacks. Go check that out. and we'll be back again with our defensive rookie review. And stay tuned for the end of that podcast. We'll make our rookie of the year, both predictions for what we think the NFL will pick and the writers will pick, and then our picks of what we thought were the rookie of the year. So thanks for listening, and be sure to check out those podcasts coming up.